Here we are again, another episode. I'm just as excited as I usually am leading up to this. Today was good. I'm at the end of the day, end of the week. This one is a little later than normal. I think the last 2 weeks have been a little later, but a lot is happening on multiple different fronts. So I want to be conscious of that. And listen, we are human beings and we adapt, we adjust, and we continue to do so. And I want to be conscious of that fact, that allow myself the ability to go ahead and again just adapt and fit in, especially with everything that's happening. But we're going to start off like we always do with a exercise in mindfulness, and we're gonna start that now. And we're here. We always follow that up with a brain teaser, a puzzle to kind of get this episode started and get our minds going and get us all in a real creative space. So the one I have for you is what can't talk but will reply when spoken to. What can't talk but will reply when spoken to. Today's conversation is going to be a little interesting. I think we're going to hit on points and talk about things that we may have discussed a little earlier in earlier episodes. But I'm actually looking forward to it. So one, I want to talk about how my week started. But in order for me to tell you that, I have to tell you just a little quick story about, I want to say sometime last year, I got a call. This writer, Larry Weber, had reached out because we have mutual friends or colleagues. Colleagues is a better word. And he was writing this book around harnessing tech for good. And he got wind of what I was working on over at Ayunta, and he reached out and we talked for a little bit. It was a virtual meeting, and he finished the book, and I was included in it. And it was, as much as it wasn't a write up about Swale. It wasn't a write up about Ayunta. It was more so that it was almost like a recognition that the path that I'm on is meaningful and inspiring to people outside of myself. And that is one of the things that I'm most appreciative of. I made a post about it where I said, as a creative, we are on this constant search for inspiration, but on that quest to be to be inspired. In turn, we are inspiring, and this was proof of that. And speaking of inspiration, that's what I want the theme of this episode to be about. This idea of where do we go when there's a creative block. When we need inspiration, like what do you do? I remember it was like my first episode. I talked about what the color black means for me, and what traveling does for me, and how inspiring it is for me. And I realized not everybody can go to it like I do, and not those outlets don't particularly work for everybody. And it's important that you find your outlet, right? Your creative escape. One of the things we talked about was this idea of downtime, right? Just separating yourself from the creative process, and just for a refresher. And I think that's important, not only for myself, but for a lot of us, right? But I wanted to spend time just talking through what that could possibly look like. If you can hear in the background, that is my son, and I guess he wants to be a part of the episode, but it's just him and I today, and he's right around the corner. If you hear him again, or if I have to escape, it's me going to get him. But one of the things I wanted to talk about is what do you do for inspiration? Where do you go when there's this creative block? And like I said, one of the things that works for me is traveling, but it doesn't necessarily have to be that significant a process, right? It doesn't have to be, book a trip somewhere, find where to go, book tickets and flights. Sometimes it's just a change of environment. And it doesn't have to be anything drastic, right? I tell people all the time, sometimes it's as simple as just going outside and living. Just experiencing your environment in a way that you haven't before. I live in a bustling part of Brooklyn, so there's eateries, there's places to just sit and lounge, there's coffee shops, there's a few parks nearby, and it always gives me an opportunity to just kind of experience life maybe from a vantage point that I haven't tried. I'll think about like cuisines that I've never had, that I've heard about, and it gives me a great opportunity to go try something different, expose myself to how others are living, and the things that fascinate other people, the things they do when I take my family, or my family and I go to the park. It's always interesting to see what a picnic looks like for everybody else, and I do a lot of people watching. And oddly enough, it's extremely inspiring to me. Along those lines, another thing I do is, and I do it randomly with my children, is I do this thing where we do a pajama walk around the neighborhood. Random morning, and in our pajamas, we'll just take a stroll or two around the block. And I like after every walk around the block, I ask, "Hey, you have another round in you?" And they'll say, "Yeah." And then we keep doing it until they decide, okay, it's time to kind of go inside. And that is inspiring for me because one, I get to see my kids, how they kind of just in this moment, in how they take this on. And for me, it's less about, because I know the block well enough, but it gives me an opportunity to see it from their eyes, from their vantage point. And that always is also inspiring to me. I know maybe 2 episodes ago, we talked about this idea of downtime and how important it is to take breaks away from your creativity. As long as it's not too long, where you get into a rut, or you find comfort in that downtime, and then it's hard for you to kind of revert back to the creative person that you know you are, you've shown yourself to be. So it's always really great to be able to take the time you need whenever you need it, but know where that cutoff point is, and how important it is to find your creativity. I don't want to say as fast as possible, because it's a timing thing, right? And I think you find it at your own pace, and there's no real rush as long as you're conscious of the time in between, because again, time travels really fast, and you'd be surprised how a year goes by. So it's always important to understand that I don't want to be away from my creativity for too long, and especially when you're in a rut. You can find inspirations from many different things, and that's why, again, I emphasize like just a change of environment. I do this thing where when I teach, after I go through what I go through here with us, this mindfulness exercise, and then the puzzle, I always ask my students. I am an adjunct professor at Parsons, and I teach integrated design. I always ask them, what did you do new this week since the last time I saw you? Did you take a different route? How did you get here? Was it public transport? Was it private? Did you do anything that you've never done before? Did you travel somewhere? And it's always interesting because they never really think or gave it any thought until I asked the question. And when I ask the question, they can go back and say, hey, that was something I did new. And those things can be extremely inspiring unconsciously. But for me, it's like I am conscious when because I'm intentional with those things. And I even play games when I go out to eat, where I look at people as I people watch, and I try to figure out their conversations. I try to tell a story about what they did before they got there, what their intentions are while they're there, and then just figuring out. And I create this whole movie scene where these are all my characters, and I try to come up with a plot, a protagonist, the villain, and then what is the storyline? Is it a romantic comedy? Is it a thriller? Is it a horror flick? And all those things happen while I just sit there. And I think inspiration can come from that as well, just kind of looking at people in their own environment. Other times when I'm extremely intentional, when I say creativity, I've said this a million times. It doesn't necessarily have to showcase itself in the arts. I've always seen sports as a unique form of creativity. And one of the things that I've done since I was a kid, whenever I needed creative inspiration, I would think of who was the greatest athlete in any particular sport. And I grew up a huge Michael Jordan fan. So what I would do is I'd go on YouTube and watch all his highlights. When I would search when was Jordan in his prime, or what was his best game. And I would watch clips of those, and to see an artist perform art in its purest form, when he or she when they're in their element, is so inspiring to me. And I used to do the same. I was a super big fan of Randy Moss as a wide receiver. He was dubbed the freak, and what he was able to do on a football field, and his athletic abilities and his prowess on the field was remarkable. So I would search his videos, and I would just sit and I would watch them, and the amount of creativity that comes from just being able to consume that is amazing. And I watch them and I get goosebumps just seeing it in awe. And that's one thing that works for me. And again, it's not limited to sports. If you think of music, I still do it with music. I would search what are the greatest albums of all time, and I would go and listen to those albums, those masterpieces. I can think of a few off the top of my head that I go to, or songs in particular that are cross generational. And I think it's important to find inspiration in those works of art. And that is something that I'm intentional about. So whenever I'm in a rut and I feel like, hey, there's this creative block that I personally need to overcome, that is one thing in particular that I generally do. And then I allow myself the opportunity to get out of the creative slump in allow myself shorter distances to overcome. A lot of the times we are trying to swing for the fences. Our first time back, or what got us in the slump, is because we're trying to perform this massive creative feat. And unfortunately, sometimes we need to take baby steps. It doesn't have to be knocked out of the park. It just could be a base hit. The goal is to get to first base, and not necessarily a home run on the next at bat. So I take I figure out smaller steps that can get me to the end goal, and then these little wins actually boosts my confidence. It reminds me of my abilities to be able to create and be creative. And then if I get a couple of these in a row, then I can feel my mojo coming back. I got my swagger back, and then I'm back to being as creative as I want to be. And it just makes me think of how inspiring and impactful completed work is. And I think a lot of the times as creatives, because we're so focused on creating the next thing, we forget the masterpieces we've created in times past. And I think it's important for us to go back and look at those and be inspired by our own selves, right? Inspired by the work that we've done, that we know for sure are amazing pieces. And I think sometimes we do ourselves a disservice because it's faux pas to champion yourself. Sometimes it's like it can come across for some people a little brash, egotistical, but in reality, I think being able to celebrate yourself and celebrate the wins and the things that you've created and your creative masterpieces, it should be inspiring, and you shouldn't feel no type of way because you celebrate yourself. I don't know if maybe the camera caught it. It was a brief intermission. My memory card got full. But yeah, back to kind of what we were talking about. This whole idea was like finding inspiration in the creative work of your favorite athlete, favorite musician, and anybody who's done some amazing things in their prime. I think it's beneficial to us all to be able to find those works of art and then get inspiration from it. Beyond that, I think you know what I think us as creatives, we don't do as much and that's like what we don't do as much as creatives is venture off into other creative realms, just to kind of tease ourselves a little bit, kind of see how and where our creativity extends, how far it extends to, and in what direction, right? I know I myself, I've explored music, I've explored architecture, I've explored a plethora of things, product design, but it doesn't have to be anything complicated, right? It's just like maybe try a hand at cooking, maybe a different recipe with a little a little razzle dazzle to it, and I think those little things can help. Something like maybe going to an improv class. Take your hand up at acting. I live in New York City. It's like Broadway is right around the corner, but it's important to kind of find these spaces where you can allow your creativity to showcase itself in other mediums, and that in itself could be inspiring. Another thing that I think is helpful is shadowing. Going on ride-alongs with other creative people in their element. There's this thing that I do, especially when I'm in a professional capacity, when I'm asked to innovate on any particular process or a product. I usually spend some time immersing myself in the experience of the user. And in that moment, I transform myself into them. And it allows me to kind of see it from their perspective, seeing what they do, the little nuances and that they incorporate to make the job more easy, or the process more easier. So, and then it allows me to be able to create because I get inspiration from them. This is no different than, again, me watching videos or listening to music, seeing creative people in their element can be extremely inspiring. And I think if we give ourselves the opportunity to be humble enough to say, "Hey, can I sit in on this? Can I watch you work?" And I think that will it'll allow you to again get inspired from the work of others, and I think there's no shame in that. As artists, to me, one of the foundational elements of creativity is this idea of being open to collaboration and sharing ideas, and that is one of the things that we talked about in a previous episode. Another thing I think we talked about failure and being risk averse as a creative, but I think a huge exercise that you can do to get over either a creative block or get your creative juices back flowing is just kind of going out there and failing. Like, do risky things to push failure. Like, we always know there's a lesson learned in failure, and it gives us an opportunity to push the boundaries of what we think is possible. And then a lot of inspiration can come from that, right? A lot of rejuvenation, re-energizing can come from failure. And I think we can use it as a tool. So one of the things that I always kind of encourage is for us to kind of go out there and fail. Like think big and do big things and take great risk. And then you'd be surprised what can possibly come from that. And we talked about it here in this conversation and previously, the importance of downtime. And I had mentioned in the episode around downtime how for me downtime is less about quiet time and more about just distracting myself, because the distraction allows me to not think about wanting to be creative or allowing, because my mind naturally wants to create and solve problems. So the best way for me to avoid that is to play this game where I distract myself. And I usually do it through social media or other mediums to be able to accomplish that. But if I'm in a creative slump, the best way for me to get out of it is to avoid the distractions and allow myself the space and the freedom to do the thing that comes naturally to me, which is create. And I do that intentionally, right? I put myself in the midst of, away from the distraction and in the midst of the problem. And then once I feel like I have a good understanding of the problem, I walk away from it. And in that space that I create, when I can find utter clarity of mind, usually early in the morning or after vinyasa, when I hit shavasana or corpse pose, then all the answers come to me. And that is my process a lot of the times. And it's funny because as I'm saying that, it makes me think of the importance of mindfulness. And that is an exercise we do at the start of every episode. Every episode of this podcast, we started off with an exercise in mindfulness. And mindfulness is another mechanism that you as a creative, a person in pursuit of your creativity, can leverage whenever you hit those creative blocks. It gives you the opportunity to center yourself, be conscious, be present in the moment, and gives you a blank slate to start from. And that is important as creatives, right? To be able to be present in the moment and understand all that is happening, why it is happening, and then be the launch pad for the creativity that follows. And it's always important to kind of, again, be mindful of the now and the why. Outside of that, I think we covered a lot. I mean, we talked about a lot over the last however long, about different ways that you can go about getting out of that, overcoming that creative block. Different ways that you can seek and find inspiration. And I I made sure I covered as many that I could think of over the course of over this episode, because I know we all find our creativity in different ways. I think there's so many terminologies, multiple ways to skin a cat. There's multiple routes to the same destination, and ultimately, what we're trying to get to is our creative self. And when we hit those creative blocks, it's important that we find a way that actually works for us, because some ways don't work for other people, and some do. And once you find the one that works for you, I think it makes the block, the creative block, smaller, and the time away from your creativity shorter. And that's the ultimate goal. And once you get to that point, when it becomes easier, then it's not as stressful when it does happen. I saw, and I'll end with this. I saw a documentary one time. I wish I could remember the name of it. It was on Netflix, and it was around just the idea of creativity. And this particular episode was talking about, I think, a guy, he's either a cartoonist for the New York Post or the New Yorker, or one of those publications. And he said, and I'm paraphrasing here, he you get uninspired, or you hit a creative block. And he said, I just have to get up and work. And again, I butchered that completely. But what he was saying was, he doesn't have the opportunity, the time, or the resources to have creative blocks. He has to get up and work, because his creativity, his livelihood is heavily dependent on his creativity. And the moment he cannot be creative, he cannot eat. And I think that was profound and powerful. And I hope that we can all get to that point where we realize, like, I cannot let this be a hurdle for me. I have to find a way to overcome this. With that said, we've come to the end of yet another episode, and I'm happy that we were able to record this, have an opportunity to talk to each other again, and just share this space. Like we always end, we always end where we started, and we started with a puzzle, or a brain teaser. And the brain teaser was, what can't talk but will reply when spoken to? What can't talk but will reply when spoken to? And the answer is an echo. An echo. It's always a pleasure. Till we meet again, or speak again, or share this space again. Continue to be great and be as creative as you possibly can. Peace.